Hello everyone, welcome to another podcast. Ben Lister here. Time for episode 35 of the Chatbox podcast today with Sean Bell. Here it is.
Hello and welcome to another Chatbox podcast. It's episode 35 today, and it's after a little break I have had. How are you doing today? Right, let's crack on. As you know, each week I have a guest to talk about their career or their job. So let's crack on with this week's guest. It's radio producer, writer and advertiser. It's the one, the only, Sean Bell. Hello, Sean. Welcome along.
Thank you.
How are you today?
Yeah, all good. Thank you very much.
That's good. Now, 5 questions about your career as a radio producer, writer, advertiser, and multimedia expert, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely fine.
You ready to rumble in the jungle, if that's okay?
Absolutely. Let's get on with it.
Let's begin. Question 1. Where did you start your work in your respective fields?
Well, when I was about 13, I'm 52 now. When I was about 13, I started DJing at my local youth club. By the time I was 17, I was working in one of the big nightclubs in Hull City Centre, which was Romeo and Juliet. So I was a DJ, and just after I'd left school, I didn't really know. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I still don't know what I'm going to do when I grow up. And I just wrote to loads of places saying I've always wanted to work in this field or that field. And one of the things I wrote to was an ad agency, to lots of ad agencies. Anyway, I got taken on by an ad agency, which was my first proper job after leaving school. And that's where I discovered radio production. Oh, before that, I'd also tried presenting. I'd been at hospital radio and I was doing a lot of RSLs at the time and that sort of thing. And I just assumed because I was a good club and pub DJ, by saying I'm good, I'm not being big-headed, but obviously I was working in a nightclub when I was 17. Because I just thought because you was a good DJ, you'd become a good radio presenter. But I soon found out the two totally different skills. And I'm an awful radio presenter. I've tried it, I can't do it, fair enough. But as I say, at this period of time when I was working at the ad agency, I discovered radio production, which was something totally different. And I was there for about 3 years. Working for a guy called Jonathan Levy, who has been a lifelong friend of mine ever since. I left there in 1989. I went to live in Greece. So I was DJing in Greece for a few years. And by the time I came back, the ad agency had closed, but John had left the ad agency rather, and he'd set up by himself as a production company who was doing radio and TV production. So I freelanced with John for 3 or 4 years maybe. Then I went full time with him at the company, which was then called Pentagon Communications. Was there for about 3 or 4 years. They were going to get bought out by another company who only wanted to focus on multimedia, which was just becoming a thing at the time, and TV production. They weren't interested in radio at all. So I left there with the complete blessing of the company and set up my own radio production company. So that's how I got into it. And also before that, I'd also been doing a lot of freelance at the BBC. We used to have a fantastic drama suite with a huge multi-track studio and loads of effects and stuff like that. And at Radio Humberside at the old building when it was on St Jameson Street, on the corner there above what used to be the post office. So I did a lot of drama and documentary production there as well. And obviously through the agency, and then set myself up with commercial production. And that's where I am today.
Nice. Well, there are a lot of people who have appeared on Radio Humberside. I remember James Hogarth telling me a friend of his got him into Radio Humberside from the hospital radio.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
No, well, there's a lot of names of people who have come across over the years. You know, it's a very small world when it comes to radio.
Yeah, it's good because I know I'm doing a bit of work at the moment, voluntary work, obviously, at Hull Kingston Radio.
Yes, yep.
Because I have 2 shows running there.
Yep.
And I obviously can't do it studio bound at the present. The
yes,
interviews.
Of course. Yes, of
due
course,
to the current what's going on in the world at the moment.
Yeah.
Anyway, question 2. What is your greatest achievement in your respective fields?
Oh, that's a difficult question. Rather than one single thing, I think there's a few highlights. I've also obviously developed my work as a voiceover artist, and there was a few years ago, I was sat in a bar in Tenerife, I think it was, and I heard my own voice going out on a radio commercial, which I've done in Tenerife, and I've just totally forgotten I've ever done it. That was quite a unique experience. I used to be one of the main voices for B&Q in the shop, or announcement voices in the shop, and it used to give me a great thrill when I used to be walking around B&Q, and then my kids, so young kids at the time, said, "That's Daddy, that's Daddy," when they heard me on the radio on the Intel channel. I occasionally get a TV commercial pops up on the screen with my voice on. That's quite good. And I did a few years ago, I wrote two 2-hour comedies, which were recorded then with Craig Charles, and that was broadcast globally on the British Forces, the FBS network. That was quite a nice thing to have achieved, and just to carry on doing what I love. I mean, I absolutely love my job. It's you know, I get paid for it, which is great, but I just love it to be given a different brief every day, to come up with a creative idea for a radio commercial, and I write it, and then I send it out to the voiceovers to get it recorded, and mix it with sound effects and the music, or we bring a campaign to life and put together a really good, cracking, effective, ear-catching radio campaign. I love it, and I think that's probably the greatest achievement that I've got. Then is that I'm doing a job which I absolutely love, and I do it from the home studio.
I like doing it from my studio as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and this is my studio where I'm in at the moment, as you can see. I don't know if you can see it properly, but down at the back there, that's my voiceover booth.
Yeah.
And then I've got my mixing desk. I don't know if you can still hear me okay, but I've got my mixing desk here. And my digital workstation, my compressors and the outboard effects and so on like that. These are some new studio toys I went and bought on the weekend. We've got a tube preamp, audio distribution box, and a Rode microphone, which I'm going to get stuck in and plumbed into the studio at some point, probably tomorrow night, I would think. So yeah, everything that I do, I'm doing it here from my home studio, which is just at the bottom of my garden.
One of my friends, Chris Marsden, does something similar.
Yes, I know Chris.
He's the guy who owns YO1.
That's right. That's correct, in York. Yeah.
Another community station.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's somewhere in the region about 350, 400 community radio stations across the country. And currently,
the other stations, I'll edit this bit out, but personally, I'm not giving it to any stations in the whole district, like other stations, like ones in Beverley as well.
Beverley or WHCR.
I'm not giving it to them because they're classed as rivals. I'd rather give it to something like YO1, RV1, TX1, who I have, and maybe Chesterfield Radio, who I have a better professional relationship with.
Well, if you go on my website, yellowlamb.co.uk, there's about 30 stations that I supply to. They're on it. It needs updating, actually. I've got a lot more stations now than that.
Do you supply to HKR?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
There's
a promo running at the moment where it says, I'd like to tell you all about my business. And then he's like, got that? No, I wrote and produced that one and voiced it as well, actually. It's a sales promo.
That one, yeah. Do you produce any shows on the station?
I don't anymore. I used to, when I said earlier about me being a rubbish broadcaster, I used to do a program called Fat and Funky Big Club Classics, and it still turns up on. I think Pete uses it a filler every now and again, but it's pre-recorded, so I can stop and edit, because I find that when I'm in the studio trying to present radio, I get very tongue-tied, which is really annoying, because if I'm in a nightclub or a bar, I can get on the microphone and I'm very fluent and proficient and I don't have a problem. Get into a radio studio and I stutter and I stammer and I just everything goes wrong.
You've been to our station yet?
I haven't been since you moved to the new place. No, I haven't. I went to the old one.
Did you go to the original home?
Yes, I've been to the original one that was at KR, and I've been to the one that was on the I can't remember what it's called, but the centre down.
Freedom.
Freedom, yeah. I popped in and saw Pete one day actually after I'd been on speed awareness course.
Yeah, because I know a lot of friends who acquaint there, because I got acquainted with Pete through his wife Fiona.
Yeah.
Because she did a bit of work. She does a bit of work for the BBC.
Yeah, does she still do the Wednesday night? Was it Wednesday night program?
Yeah, but it's gone up to 4 hours now.
Yeah, and she does a lot of cover. She does cover work as well, doesn't she? When they need people in.
Yeah, one of my friends who did a bit of work at one of my friends actually works at BBC down in Sheffield.
Yeah.
Becky Measures.
I don't know.
Who or Howard Pressman.
That name rings a bell, but I'm not sure if it's somebody I know actually. So yeah, when I used to do my syndicate, when I used to do this program, I used to record it here. And like I said, I could stop and start, I could edit it. So it did sound very fluent and seamless, but it was heavily edited before it went out. That was syndicated. I think at one point I had that going on about 74 radio stations around the world, because I just used to sit at the night time.
You do a bit like a guy who we have on our station who does the retro radio show.
Yes, I love that program.
Andy Henley.
Yeah, I love that. I found that really interesting. That one.
I don't know if you've ever met Andy Henley.
I've not met him personally, no.
You know of him?
Yeah, well, I know of him, and I know that particular show. I enjoy that show when it's on.
A good friend of mine does a syndicated show, Rob Charles.
I know that name, but I'm not sure about.
He was the DJ in Peter Kay's car show.
Oh yes, that's where I know his name from. No, I don't know him personally, but I don't know his name. But yeah,
I do, because he's a hero of mine. Because I've had loads of heroes. Anyway, question 3. I'll edit this bit out. Question 3. What is your favourite part about the job?
Well, I think, like I just said, about my greatest achievement is that I just love what I do. I mean, I've come up with different ideas every day, which I enjoy doing. I get to make things. I'm creative. I get to make different campaigns. I love the writing side of things. I mean, I do a lot of the writing as well. I write articles and features and scripts for comedy, and I've written all sorts of TV stuff in the past. And then I get to produce it and make it and hear it going out in different places. So I think, that's basically my favourite part about the job, is I just love what I do.
Brilliant. And that's question 3 complete. We'll skip on to question 4, because I know you've got to get some food down yourself.
I'd like to soon, yeah.
We'll skip on to question 4. How has COVID affected your line of work and life?
Well, it's very funny, actually. I mean, I know obviously COVID has been a very serious thing, but before COVID happened, I'd had a business which had been doing really good, a production company called NYPD, which is New Yorkshire Production Department, which had been doing really good business for quite a few years. Then I hit a really bad period. It was a combination of lots of different things all happened at the same time. I used to produce for a large number of the UKRD radio stations. And then they suddenly took all the work in-house, which was like that caused me a really big problem, because it's like a tap turning off. I was doing so many commercials for all these stations across the country, and then all of a sudden just went gone. That business went. At the same time, lots of my stations that I worked with were getting bought up by other groups. This was all the groups that we've got today were starting to get formed up, and stations were getting bought up and getting rebranded as Capital. So I lost all of that business as well. And then I got a big ad agency client, and the client sold their business to somebody else, and I lost that. And it was just a case of almost every few weeks I was losing a bigger chunk of my business. So my old company, NYPD, went bust, unfortunately, which I regret, but there's nothing I could do about it. And I spent about 4 years maybe, when I was still turning over bits of some commercials, but nowhere near the volume that I used to do. And I had to go get another job as well outside the industry. And I actually thought like my time here doing production full time was finished. I spent a few years truck driving, which I'm going to say I thoroughly enjoyed, but doing long distance driving, I wouldn't have any problems going back to that again. I just used to listen to the radio all day. And then I spent 3 years working as an outdoor instructor, which I still do today on a freelance basis. I teach shooting, kayaking, climbing. I'm a scout leader. I've been doing it for years. But I also worked, doing it as a corporate events and for schools and education and stuff like that. So I spent about 4 years just doing production on a part-time sort of thing. Now, going back to you asking about COVID, when COVID kicked in, and I found myself at home, and I kind of took a step back. And this is when I realized that I sort of sat down and started looking at the number of community radio stations across the country. And I put together a sales promo, which I voiced myself, so it didn't cost me anything. And I sent it to about 90 stations around the country. They didn't know they was even getting it. And it was a quite good creative one. And I just sent it to them and said, look, if you need any commercial production, this is the sort of quality you can get. And, give me a shout and I'll do something big. And the business came in like mad. Absolutely fantastic. So I'm very quick that I set myself up as another company, which is Yellow Lamb. That's yellowlamb.co.uk. I set this, then the work just started coming in. So it just snowballed. Whereas, I'd gone from making a lot of ads in the previous, and then I was down to making 3 or 4 a week, which I couldn't really make a living out of anymore, which is why I got the jobs. And now I'm back to making, 5, 6, 7, 8 ads a day. It's just ridiculous. I love it, so it's not a problem. And I set myself up with another. I also sort of diversified slightly, and I'm also doing when you're in somewhere and you get the put on hold and you're listening to on hold messaging music, and it says press 1 for accounts, 2 for this, sales, and all that sort of stuff. I've set that up as a separate company, and that's doing really good business as well. So COVID, because I found myself back at home and I got the studio here, and I went and did these sales promos and then started going to VoIP suppliers to sell the other side of the business. It's been a real opportunity for myself. Now I know that's, a lot of people have suffered, and a lot of people have had a lot of hardship out of it, and obviously that's understandable. But COVID for myself gave me the chance to take a step back, reevaluate the landscape, the radio landscape, and launch a new business, which I say it's doing fantastic. And I'm now through Yellow Lamb, I'm supplying to probably about 30 or 40 radio stations across the country. Some of them I get 100% of their work. Some of them just use me on a casual basis. Some just if they've got a special client. It's in varying degrees, but I've rebuilt myself a solid business, and it's looking good. So, long may it carry on like that.
Wow, what a brilliant job you do. And also, final question on the list, question 5. What advice would you give to people who are who want to follow in your footsteps and are starting out?
When I was at school, which was a long time ago, so it might have all changed now. Although I know it's not changed that much because my kids are in their early 20s, so they only went through this, I don't know, like 5 years ago, something like that. Careers used to say to you, whatever you used to say you wanted to do at school, careers officer would say to you, well, you've got to get qualifications and this to do this and this. And certainly in the broadcast industry, having said that, I said earlier, I've also worked on the TV side of stuff as well as radio, which is my passion. But a lot of it, if somebody tells you you've got to have qualifications to get into it, I don't think that's the case. A lot of it is just hands-on learning, and you only get the hands-on learning by knocking on people's doors, saying, can I come along and lend a helping hand, and you learn on the job. I'm not saying that doing the educational route isn't going to work, but from my experience, and when I was when I was part of a TV crew and stuff like that, everybody else had just learned on the job. You've got to have determination. You've got to accept taking the knockbacks. My big mistake I made when I lost all the business before was I got too complacent because everything was going along quite well. I've got too many eggs in one basket, and it's a very fickle industry, the radio industry, so it can change very quickly. So just be aware of that and have a sort of a backup plan as well, which I do have now. Hopefully, I'll never have to go back to it, but I certainly would be aware of that if that situation was changing. And just have the determination and carry on going for it.
Yeah, brilliant.
And that's really all I think I can say to that one, Ben.
Yeah, brilliant, Sean. You're an inspiration to the next generation.
I'd like to think so.
Right, that's it for today. That's it for today. Thank you very much for joining me today, Sean.
You're very welcome, Ben. Thank you for asking me.
Do join me again for another podcast very soon. But for now, please give it up for my special guest, Sean Bell. Thank you very much for listening and watching. And that's a wrap.
Interview with Sean Bell. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it filled some time in your gaps. My next upload will be with Matthew Rowland from Reading Hospital Radio. So join me then. Don't forget to like, subscribe and all that. Dislike if you didn't like. And also check out my Wix website as well. So check them out and check this out. And I'll talk to you soon. And that's a wrap. Be allowed.